your message, share your message. Woo! Yeah. Share
Welcome. We're so excited for you to be here today on the Share Your Message show because I have got an incredible guest today. I'm your host, Tonya Hofmann. I'm the CEO and founder of the Public Speakers Association, amongst other amazing fun things that I do. Today is no different, that I have got somebody I adore. And she is one of those people that just blows your mind, the amount of knowledge that she has. And so without further ado, hey, Corinne, how are you?
I'm great. Thank you so much for inviting me to be here. I'm beyond excited.
You know, I guess I should say your full name. Corinne Olson is one of the experts that has spoken at my conference. She's speaking at my London conference. Every time people are like, wow, because you go from the attorney background that you have to the speaking background, helping people with their business and all these other type of fun things. I mean, you've done a lot in your time here on this planet, right?
Yes.
So you're focused now kind of on people's stories and helping them get their stories out there. What is that? Why is that important?
Story has always been important. From the beginning of humankind, the way that we best connect with each other is through story. And what many people are now realizing is story is also one of the most important ways to help somebody get over their objections, to teach points so that they remember them, and to get people inspired to take action. So if you were last year thinking about story, it was important. But what's happening is for 2019, story is ramping up so much more that if you're not really nailing down better ways to tell your story and to tell the story of the people you're reaching, you could be left in the dust. And I know a lot of people are saying that, but the importance of relationships in 2019 has become so key, so critical for any business, any movement, any cause, any purpose. If you're not more effectively telling your story, you're going to be losing people. So it's a perfect time for everybody to start paying even more attention to an old idea turned new.
Love it. I know that was the biggest moment for me. And this is what we're talking about, me coming from being an introvert and everything, and realizing that people actually wanted to know me, right? That was like the shocking part, because I'm like, yeah, craps happen. Who cares? What does that have to do with business? But it does.
Absolutely. It's so important. And kind of picking up on the point you just said, craps happened. We all have crap in our lives. Those of us who are wanting to still use last year and the year before's positioning of, look at me, I'm the guru, I'm the expert, I don't struggle, they're missing the huge opportunity for connection. But the key is that going far the other way, being too vulnerable, bleeding all over your audience, that doesn't work either. There's a sweet spot in the middle. And you have to know how to do that, and you have to know how to leverage that in order to make it so that it connects with your audience in the way you really want to be using it. So that was a great point on your part. Thanks.
Yeah, I know when I first started talking about my message and who I was and my story, you kind of fumble through it. And it's great when people can meet someone like yourself that can kind of help them, make it tight and impactful, like without you saying bleeding all over them, because there is too much that you can give. Where they're like, okay, I don't need to know that much, TMI type of thing. And people do, they have a tendency then to start crying on stage, and, and it's just blubbers after that, or they get the whole, audience crying and out of control. And then it's hard to come back from that. And you can't sell effectively, even if it's lead generation, if your audience is out of control.
Absolutely. And you never want to make it so that your audience feels they've got to take care of you, because it not only is the inappropriate balance, but it also shifts what's going on in buying momentum. And when I say buying, I mean taking any kind of action. It could be to download the free item or whatever it is that you're offering, or come to the next call. It doesn't have to actually be a purchase. If you have a mismatch between what you're saying in your story and where they're at and where you want to lead them, the whole sales thing falls apart.
I saw a gentleman one time. He's kind of known here in Austin as, the show off, So he got up on stage, and you could tell he had someone who said, you need to connect with people because they aren't getting you. And so he tried to talk about his divorce, and his wife, has the kids, and it just came off bad, right? It was like so bad. You have to do it right. And he's like crying on stage, and everyone felt so weird. And so you have to know how to do this right. So do you have like a kind of a tip you can give the listeners today?
Yeah, I'd love to give a couple of tips if that's
good.
okay. So the first one is on the emotional thing, the thing that you just mentioned. It's really key to have some emotion about it. So if what's happening is you can say it like it's a sleazy, slick sales piece, you need a new story. And your life has so many of them to choose from. You shouldn't be wedded to just one. In fact, we have all kinds of stories we should be using at different places in the materials that we're doing, in our content and our sales pieces. And many people think, I just use the same story again and again and again. I was going very well, the hero's journey. I was doing very well. Something happened. I tanked. I struggled for a period of time. I figured my way. I crawled out, and now everything's great. The problem, of course, is for many experts, the thing they're talking about, it hasn't become great totally yet. They've gotten some insights, but not everybody in 2019 needs you to have perfectly figured out the end. What they want is, are you willing to roll up your sleeves and be on the journey? And that's where story becomes really, really important. Because if in the storytelling, I, as your audience, understand you're not right for me, that's good if you're actually not right for me. But if it's a story mismatch and I mistakenly think you're not right for me because you're telling me the wrong story, then actually you've done a total disservice not only to you and your business, but to your audience too. You can't help them if you can't get them engaged. So one tip is, in the emotion that you're using, make it an appropriate match. Have some. Don't sound sleazy. Don't sound like it just like got off the back of a cereal box and you're reading it. But don't have so much that you can't control yourself. So if you find yourself getting moist-eyed while telling your story, cool, that's great. You don't have to, but if you're that place, it's still good. If you find yourself uncontrollable, then the audience will step into the place of having to take care of you, and you've just blown everything. So don't tell those stories. That's one tip. The second tip is, make sure that your story is appropriate for where you want to take your people. It seems like very obvious, but most people don't realize that. So for instance, if what you're doing is telling people about the course you're selling, somewhere in your story you should be talking about how a course helped you. If you're talking about coaching, somewhere in your story you should be talking about how coaching helped you. If you're talking about going to somebody for a mentor or for speaking, talk about something about that. And it doesn't have to be, oh, I paid for a course, it helped me. Oh, I paid for speaking and it helped me. It can be more the internal struggle. So what people don't realize is it's not always the perfect result. In most really great crafted stories, there's two things going at the same time. There's one story, and then there's the story underneath the story. What did you get from the experience? So you hear, I'm sure you do in the work that you do, tons of people talking about how I used to be horrible at speaking. I used to be so afraid. I used to think I would throw up. And then you get the other people, oh, no, I love speaking. It's like, but they don't talk about internally why. What does it mean to them to speak? What were they robbed of in speaking moments earlier? Or why are they afraid? And when you go not just on the surface, but the level underneath in your story, and you connect it to what it is you're now offering, it changes how things happen. A third tip is that we often go to facts, and some facts are really important. But if you can even put some story around some of your facts, it makes a huge difference. So for instance, if I said it's a fact, When I was in college, I went to 2 universities for a period of time at the same time, full time, in order to get 2 degrees that I really wanted. Okay, that's a fact. Interesting. Maybe sticks with people for a short period of time, but it's a snoozer after a while. But if
Right.
I shared, I was going to school because I wanted to be an orchestra conductor. And my parents, who were not paying for my education, said to me, on graduation, you are not going to get a job. You will be homeless. Perhaps you ought to think about double majoring. And I thought, like I am so determined I'm going to be an orchestra conductor. Okay, we know how that story ends up, right? Because I became a lawyer and entrepreneur. But I was so determined. I was like in that 20-something age where do not tell me my dream won't come true. And so what I decided to do was go and get a second degree in order to make my parents happy and kind of hedge the bet. But I was still stuck in I'm going to be an orchestra conductor. So of course, they're concerned about my getting a paying job at the end, my determination. I went and took German literature. Like that was ever going to get me a job, right? When that gets a story like that into the background of either a lot of credentials, a lot of degrees, a lot of hard work, it makes it more human. Like you can see the humor in, I did something that was totally insane for trying to get a job. And so it's like those human moments we want to see. We don't want to see that you just have a bunch of degrees. We want to know underneath it all, you're there and we can relate to even the stupid stuff you do.
Yeah, I think that all of those are incredible points. And I've seen so many people, especially the mismatch, right? They're talking to an audience and they don't adjust their story for them. There was a highly respected gentleman here in Austin at an event, and it was almost all women in the audience. And he was telling about, that he's married and, that they've been married for 30 something years. And, and he was going through his story and everyone was kind of in that moment with him and he was doing a great job. And then he instantly blew it by telling the whole place, oh yeah, and my wife's in Houston right now spending all of my money shopping. And I'm like, oh my gosh, every one of those women was like, yeah. I mean, you could just see the arms folding, and no one was caring what he had to say. So you have to be careful about your story, right?
Right. And knowing your audience, it's so key. I was in an event where a gentleman was speaking on sales and he had worked in a major corporation. He actually was the person in charge of sales, he was really good at it. And he was talking about how if you don't get sales, you go under. And so there was an instance where he had his sales team and nobody could sell him this item. So he fired them all. And he was giving that presentation to a group of people who had just been laid off. It's like, oh my gosh, do you know what you just did? Right? So we sometimes get so focused in the structure of the story that we become wedded to it instead of being connected to the audience. And that's the biggest cause of most mismatch, when we're not connected to where the audience is.
Yeah, I think a lot of times you just got to stop and, watch your eyeballs of the people. But, if you're talking to them instead of talking at them, I think a lot of times people have this, pre-done presentation in their head and they don't adjust it. And I think that is really the reason most people struggle with their speaking careers.
Absolutely. And they're not willing in the moment to say, you know what, I just screwed up. Or they try and hide what's patently obvious to all of us. So if you're more stilted in your presentation, and sometimes I can be, then it's good to just say that, like, please, if ever my attorney interrogation technique comes out of boring you to death because I become monotone, could you do me a huge favor and raise your hand and let me know? Like engage them on the things that you're concerned about, as long as it's a way to get the group connected to you, not a disconnection.
Exactly. I know, especially with us going and having our conference in London this year, right? Some of the things I'll start off with the audience is we may say things from America, or there's a lady coming from Sweden, there's a lady coming from Canada. There may be things that you're like, what did they just say? Just because there is a mismatch of language. And so if you just start off by saying, hey, if that ever happens, this is what you do, then everyone feels comfortable and you can move on.
Right. And especially when people can sense you're really concerned about connecting with them, that it isn't, especially in London, it isn't just a sales pitch, right?
Right.
You're actually concerned about building relationship. That goes a long way to taking care of those kinds of social missteps that we all make at some point.
We all make them. Boy, do I have stories. Yeah, because I think a lot of times when we get going in anything that we do, you know, some of the best things that we learn, right? Our learning moments in our life is from those mistakes. And you're like, oh, won't do that again. So don't be afraid, but also reach out. And I think that is the biggest part, is reaching out to someone like you and just getting the help up front. So that way you have a better chance of not making as many mistakes. So I know you have something amazing to share with our listeners today. What is that?
I'm inviting everybody to come to my Facebook group. So the Facebook group is at, of course, facebook.com/groups/Corinne Olson. And it's KARINOLSON. And in that group, there's a number of free trainings. There's tidbits of information. It helps people stay up to date on a couple of things. Like just today, we posted on how to increase click-through rates by over 280% on your Facebook. So there's a number of tidbits that go into there. And then we're going to be talking about some story opportunities, and especially for 2019. Not only is story important, we already went over that, but what's really important is story in a way that engages your audience without having them take over. And so there's some really important techniques that are going to come up in 2019 for how to engage people in ways that when they leave, they don't just feel like they heard a great story. They want to be part of your story. And that's the most key part. So go to the facebook.com/groups/Corinne Olson, get in the group, let us take your storytelling and other aspects of your business to a new level.
Love it. All right, everyone. So go and do that immediately. Remember, Corinne is KARIN, Olson, OLSON. I got that right.
Correct. It's Swedish, just like the doctor who's coming in London.
Yay!
Yes.
All righty, everyone. So go and get connected, because obviously you need to know her anyways. And she's especially someone that you want to follow and kind of absorb the amazing information, because she's got that's what I love about you, Corinne, is you've got this huge breadth of knowledge that just never ends. And every time I talk to you, you're like, oh, I've learned this now. And I'm like, oh, that is awesome. So I love that you keep growing yourself too.
And also, just so you know, fronting it up, I am an attorney. Nothing I'm saying is making an attorney-client relationship. I'm not your attorney. Even if in the Facebook group you find there's some education information about what your terms and conditions should say, or GDPR, any of those things, it's relationship building, it's education. And thank you so much for getting the opportunity to get to know you and the people that connect with you. It's truly been an honor. The people that you connect with are amazing, and I really appreciate that. As
Love
are
it.
you.
Yay! We're a mutually loving, friendship. So there you go. All righty, everyone. Get connected, Corinne. Also, follow me. If you have any questions ever, just ask. That's what we're all here for, is just to help you and move that needle. So go to Public Speakers with an S, Association, all spelled out.com to find out all the information. Also get connected to Corinne on there if you want her to come and speak. You can find all the speakers and so much more info. So thank you, Corinne. Thanks, everybody. See everyone next time.